Good morning, everybody. We'll get started here in a couple minutes. I am continuing to let members in from the waiting room. We'll take attendance. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat. I believe PDRs from Tuesday were posted already, so just make sure to check your account, make sure we didn't miss anybody. And we'll get started here right at 10 a.m. We had close to 77, I want to say, signed up here, so we'll give it another couple minutes. All right, I've got 10 a.m. We'll go ahead and get started. Want to be respectful of everybody's time, including our presenter, Jeremiah Hoffman, which many of you know. Jeremiah Hoffman is one of our very own Wisconsin PGA professionals, coming from kind of a background of a lot of mix of things, right, Jeremiah? We've got athletic director, green grass facilities. I'm missing a bunch, I feel like, but I'm sure you'll touch on that in your presentation. So thanks again for joining us. This is number 3 of number 8 in our winter virtual education series. So again, you guys can sit back, relax a little bit here as we get ready to turn it over to Jeremiah. If you do have questions about content shared today, something pops in your head as we go along through our presentation, feel free to use the chat feature. You can also email me. I would imagine Jeremiah doesn't mind getting interrupted if he needs to answer questions. But with that being said, I'll kick it over to you.
So that last one you pumped.
Thank you, Erica. I appreciate it. I am going to, Erica, can you let me share?
There we go.
All right. So oops. Okay. Hopefully now looks
Perfect.
can you guys see which do you see? Do you see just the screen or do you see like my notes page?
I see just the screen. So everything looks
perfect.
good here, Jeremiah. Yep.
All right. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to chat today. This is I'll give the full disclosure here at the beginning. I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, either one of those. Nor have I been, formally trained in any of this. How athletes, golfers, people think about things has been something that's been fascinating to me. And in my new role, working with a lot of college coaches and graduate assistants and people who want to become coaches, it's become something that I've spent a little time, or a lot of time actually, kind of researching and diving into. As Erica mentioned, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll try and see it. Erica will help me out with that, I'm sure. Put something in the text box. Certainly can share the presentation here with you after today. My email is, I can share that at the end as well. Happy to share that with you, or just talk about any of these things. I don't think that this is all inclusive. I don't think that This is the only way you can approach these things. So just thought that this might be something, whereas we're working with students, that would be really useful in addition to kind of the fundamentals and the basics of the golf swing. So without any more delay here. So what I want you to think about is like the mental game as a whole, and like how important is that, the mental approach to you individually in your own game. And then where does it rank with your students? And how important are mental strategies, do you think, to the average player? And I think that, as we'll talk about some more today, that my general feel is that our students are in a very different place with the mental approach than we are. And there's probably an undervaluing of how important it is to understand some strategies on how to think around a game of golf, or think about a practice session, or think about how you're going to improve at this game. And maybe for some of us, there's some that's pretty low on the priority list now too. And so hopefully over the next time here together, I can share some strategies with you and some perspectives that will make it so that you have some strategies as you go on your own game and as you work with your students. So I want you to just think about those things. Like think about in an honest assessment, where do these things rank for you? Where do they rank for you on your individual, for your game? And then how much, think back to last season, how many times you talked about this with a student, and as a general thought, just not course management so much, but just about how they think about their golf swing, how they think about their game and their ability. Couple of quotes here that I have on the next few slides from some of the greatest and what they did. Muhammad Ali, champions aren't made in gyms. Champions are made from something they have deep inside, a desire, a dream, a vision. The vision is what we're going to talk about a little bit, but having a plan, having a vision, being able to visualize that success is really, really important. And that's a theme that we'll see where the best at anything are approaching it from this way: the gym, the range, the course, the lessons with you all as swing coaches and instructors, super important. But if we don't have that other piece where we're thinking about some of these other things, I think we aren't able to then necessarily maximize. Kind of a funny quote, but it's right on. Yogi Berra, played obviously long before my time and most of our times, but baseball's 90% mental and the other half is physical. So just that idea that the mental approach to anything, especially in sports, especially in golf, is really, really important. A quote from a golfer, obviously, would be important here. So Bobby Jones, we've all heard of him. We all know him. We all probably have heard, seen, used this quote before, either with a student or thinking about it with our own game. One thing that, just as a side note here to this quote, I've obviously heard it before, and I'm sure many of you have as well, but I always thought about this in the context of course management and how, thinking your way around the game, around the golf course, and being able to select the right club and hit the right shots that the conditions require. And I think that's part of it, but I also think there's a lot more to it, and it's more of being able to focus on what's important and being able to block out the noise, if you will, and the distractions, and move forward with concise and clear decision making so that you can employ those strategies that come along in course management. So with all of that context, we'll start here with this thought. And that is, I think, where we would all agree that especially our beginning golfers, our average golfers, our golfers that aren't quite reaching their goals, that aren't performing as well as they would like, or think that they're better than their scores indicate. And even some of our really skilled players and really experienced players probably fall into this, but that's, we try and control everything. We try and have total control about everything. We try and make the perfect golf swing. We try and hit the golf ball in the perfect area of the fairway, or we try and approach the green and hit it, perfectly from 50 yards. Our expectations are that we're going to hit it to a tap in range. And so we're trying to control and have influence over every single thing that happens. And the reality is that doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. We can make a really, really good golf swing and the result doesn't show it. And it doesn't go the same way that we thought that it might, or that we think that it should. And so as I have that thought, I'm sure I did not come up with this, but it's one that I use a lot, is I like to use with students in golf. I like to use it. I'm a basketball coach as well. I like to use it with my basketball players, is just surrender the result. You are going to put the input in, and you cannot control the ultimate result. So just control what you can control. And the result is what the result is. And so if you go in with that approach that I'm just going to surrender the result, and sometimes I'm going to get lucky and things are going to go really well, and that's great. And sometimes I'm going to do everything I can the right way and it's still not going to work out. And so I think to give you some idea of what I'm talking about, I think you're probably considering the same thing, but we get a bad bounce. We get a bad lie. Our opponent, if we're in stroke play or we're in match play, we have zero control over what our opponent does. We don't get to play defense in golf. We can't control if our opponent makes 4 straight birdies or 4 straight doubles. The ball can lip in or lip out. That doesn't necessarily mean that we made a bad putting stroke or a bad read. Sometimes the ball just doesn't go in the hole. The weather, okay, it could be windy, it could be cold, it could be rainy, it could be hot. We can't control those factors, and they're going to influence how the game goes. And that's okay if we can just go in with that approach that we're going to control the controllables. And then the course results, or course conditions, I'm sorry. See that a lot in high school golf. High school golfers think that they're tour players, and high school golfers think that they should play on tour level golf courses. And especially if you're a boys golf coach, even the very best golf courses in this state are not in the same shape in April that they will be in July. And so trying to control or be frustrated or worry about what the course conditions are is not going to help. So I think I'm starting here because I think that this can be kind of this overarching thought as we go through and talk about some of these other perspectives, or how we do some of these things, or some of the strategies. But understanding that everything or most everything I'm talking about today is from this perspective of, we're going to control the input, and we're going to the results are what they are. And we are going to control anything that's in our control, and anything that's not, we're not going to worry about it. We're not going to allow that to get us sidetracked.
Hey, Jeremiah, we had a question written in your experience, because I know you've, coached youth and, all the way up to probably senior golfers, the concept of surrendering the result. Do you find in your experience, is it harder to teach to adults or youth, or is it kind of just difficult because it's a difficult concept to understand fully?
I think it's easier for kids right now, or newer players, because they don't have this memory of all these things that have happened in the game of golf, and they don't have the experience and haven't, in the case of a really good player or a senior player who's played a long time, who's just played, and this is how I've always done it. And so there's already this ingrained idea that, well, I have to do all these things, otherwise the result isn't going to be there. So it's a little individualized, but I would say in general, newer players, younger players, it's easier. Those that are more experienced have done it longer. It's going to take some effort and some repetition to make it, to self-reminding to make it work.
Sure.
Good question, though. Thank you, whoever that was. So a couple different ways we can do this. This has been, I've been this guy a lot. And a lot of us probably have. So we can take a negative approach, and a lot of our students will. I don't know how many times I've been in a golf lesson and the student has said to me, man, I just suck. I really, really suck. Or how can I hit such a terrible golf shot? Or I hate hole number 15 on this golf course. Or when you're playing with them or with your friends or with yourself, it's that tough tee shot or that tough approach shot, and you just think, I'm going to hit it in the water. I'm going to definitely hit it in that red penalty area on the left side. There's no doubt I'm going to drop. All right, this one's definitely going out of bounds. And we've all seen it we've watched players do it. We've watched ourselves do it. And that when you do that, a lot of times you're really self-fulfilling when it comes to that. And overall, getting mad or being really negative or approaching it from that way isn't helpful. It's not going to help our decision making when we do hit a bad shot. It's not going to allow us to think clearly about what we're going to do on the next shot or the next hole or on the back nine, because we're going to just be stuck in the fact that it's negative, it's not going well. And we can't focus on the process. We can't think about the process at all because we're just thinking about how can I possibly miss that 3-footer on the last hole. And now that carryover happens, and the self-talk or the conversation that goes on in our own brains becomes really, really negative. And instead of thinking about what's in front of us, we now are still thinking about whatever it is, which we all know has that snowball effect. Okay. So, and then there's the total opposite, right? So there's the positive. I can do this. I'm going to make par. This will be my career low. Way more helpful than being negative. Really way more helpful. But again, if we're just positive, when we only think that somehow magically everything is going to go correct, we again we're away from the process. We're just thinking about how great it's going to be. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't think positive. We shouldn't, because we need to. There's part of it, but we need some more context to what that is. It can't just be a blind positive approach where we think everything's going to go perfect. And even if it doesn't go perfect, it's going to go perfect next. Because that doesn't give us any tangible help. It's not something that's giving us the ability to focus on what made that last shot good, or what's going to make us be able to make par even after we hit that bad tee shot, or how we're going to go through the process of shooting that career low or improving, whatever the case may be. So yes, positive, way better or significantly better than being negative, but positive alone can't lead us to the kind of process or the thought process or the strategies that we need to be the most successful as we play golf. So one of the things that I started to do and really, really have liked and have gone back to a lot is thinking about it from a neutral perspective. And I think many of you and myself included, before I had ever heard of neutral thinking, have heard about this or thought about it a little bit and said, in a round of golf, we got to be even keel. We've told our lessons that I've told basketball players, we can't be too high or too low. And we just got to be kind of there in the middle. And I think that neutral thinking is that, but this just takes it a little step further and has some more meat on it versus just saying, don't get too high or don't get too low. Well, what does that really mean? And the reason that I have Russell Westbrook there, and again, I can share some of these things in an email, or you can write them down later, is there's an author named Trevor Mawad, who unfortunately Trevor has passed away. He had cancer and passed away, but he wrote a couple books, and he actually was Russell Wilson's mental coach when Russell Wilson was still really good. Not quite as good as maybe he was a few years ago, but I always have liked and appreciated how Russell has approached the game and has approached football and has approached life. And if you go on YouTube, you can find a lot of videos where he talks about that, and he talks with Trevor. Trevor wrote 2 books. Those books are It Takes What It Takes and Getting to Neutral. Those would be, they're very easy reads. I don't read particularly fast, and they were really easy for even me, so that you can get through those pretty quickly. And there's just a million nuggets in there that will help, whether you start to approach it as this neutral thinking type of strategy with yourself and with your students or not. I think there's a lot of things that you can pull out of there that'll help. But what it is it's really focusing on a process, and it's really focusing on being totally honest and objective with where you are and and approaching it matter of fact. So I have hit a bad tee shot. I am under a tree. I can be mad that I hit that shot, or I can say, what is the best way for me to get out of this situation and minimize the problem on this hole? Or I want to fill in the blank of what your student comes to you on the lesson tee and says. Stop slicing, hit it further, hit more greens, be better out of the sand. All fine. So that's the start of the process. They've been honest with themselves that they are not, that's not a strength of their game. And so what are the step-by-step processes? And we look at it in that regard, and we're trying to continue to move forward. And so what I would say is, going back, I kind of said this before, but being mad about a bad shot has no benefit on the next shot. So once it's, I've heard it talked about as that concept, a little bit of letting things go. I've heard of people say, flush it. As soon as that bad thing happens, just flush it, forget it, and move on to the next thing. That's a little bit of this. Kind of be where your feet are, exactly where am I at in the round? Where am I at in my practice plan, in my approach to get better? Where am I at in my career, if it's a high school or college player? And where am I trying to get to? And what are the very clear steps to get me to reach those goals that I have? This also kind of focuses our mind on what is important. And one of the things that was I think it's in the Getting to Neutral book, is a quote from there that I just jotted down, is that we can only sustain one dominant thought at a time. And so if we're thinking about the bad shot that we just hit, or how can we possibly get out of this situation, or now because I just made double, I've got to birdie the next 3, or I had a bad practice session and now I need to do, we then are thinking about all these other things, and our mind starts to bounce all over the place, and we aren't able to focus on whatever that is that's most important for us to continue to work on. Okay. Last thing I'll say about this is the picture that is used in the book that I kind of like, is that if you picture a car in neutral, if a car is in neutral, it can go forward or backward. It can respond to the situation really, really easily. And so being in that neutral, being ready to move in any direction and do whatever the situation requires is a pretty good place to start from. Okay, so I have been doing a couple of these presentations to like high school and middle school coaches. And, I've shared some information. There's more information that I'll share, but the question always is, and as I was in your chairs and would go to seminars or go to clinics and sit there and think, okay, all of this information is fantastic, but how in the world am I going to implement it, or how am I going to use it? Because I can write it down and I have notebooks and files at home that have notes from that are really, really good stuff. But if it doesn't do me any good, unless I have some kind of plan to implement it and use it and incorporate it into what I'm trying to do on a daily basis. So as we're thinking about implementation, it's kind of these categories that I have up here is, you know, we're framing it in this way, is how do we help our students change the way they think? Like, this is going to be a 180 for some of them. It's going to be very different. And so how do we help them do that without just saying, well, you just need to be neutral? And it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So what are the strategies to help them improve? Okay. And I think for myself, in my own game, and I have a son who's a senior in high school, who's a decent player, helping him improve in these, the hardest part is like being, for him and for me, is to be really intentional about that improvement. It's way too easy to go to the range, to go out on the course and just hit balls or just play. And there's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. But if we want to be better, if we want to be more confident, more calm, more able to be neutral when we're playing, we have to have an intentional plan to go about that. I've said this way too often, is just be tougher mentally. I'm at the very end of Gen X, so that was how I grew up. And those of you that were older, that you certainly grew up that way also. You know, that was just be tougher mentally. Just, why does that bother you? You know, you're soft. None of those things are really that helpful, but that's the perspective that I think it's easy to fall into that. And I catch myself in that too. So how do we do this? What are we going to do to help our students, to help ourselves, versus just say, be tougher mentally? So you got to practice. You teach lessons. All of you teach lessons to your students of all different ages and abilities. You're asking them to, whatever the skill or the fundamental is that you're working on, you're asking them how to go between now and when we meet again to work on these things, and to try and improve and to work on the drills or the skill or the position or whatever it is. And we need reps to make that happen. So you have to practice. You have to ask, part of your practice plan, if this is how you're gonna, you're gonna incorporate some mental coaching into your teaching philosophy and your teaching plan, you have to incorporate it into what you're asking your students to practice. Okay, it won't just happen. You'll see that there's ways that they can do it on the golf course. There's ways that they can do it away from the golf course. And some of it feels corny and weird, but in the end, it's just like anything else. It's repetition, it's muscle memory, it's just having the confidence of being rehearsed and being practiced. And then I really like these 3 statements that you can use a lot with your students and use with yourself as things do get tough. You know, we get in that spot where we get nervous, or we've hit some bad shots, or things aren't going our way. It's just that little bit of neutral self-talk, if you will. I've prepared thoroughly. I've not allowed myself to get sidetracked, and I've focused on the task at hand. Those might not always be true, but I think they do a good job of centering what we're trying to think about and how we're trying to approach this situation, whatever that situation might be. Okay. I'll pause. Erica, any questions? Is there any questions in the chat box or anything? Are we doing good?
No questions in the chat box, but
Okay.
if someone has a question, yeah, feel free to pause
Yeah.
it. Otherwise, we can keep going.
I'm gonna keep going. If you have a question, put it in the chat box or I think you can probably raise your hand somehow or just unmute yourself and at a chance here, chime in, because I will just keep going and go a little fast otherwise. So, so here's some of those strategies. So we have to practice. Okay, we have to practice. Well, what do we have to practice? So the next handful of slides here are just what are we going to practice, or what are some things to think about incorporating? I have become, I didn't think I was this guy, but I guess I am. I've become more and more about like these simple statements that that explain exactly what we want. And do simple better, you can apply to absolutely anything. If you know, if you can do the very simplest things better, you're going to be really good at whatever it is. And I think one of the things that's fascinating to me, if you ever read or research or listen to people talk about like the difference between a high level pro in any sport and an amateur or even a very good amateur, the difference is the understanding and the ability to perform the fundamentals at a master level. The LeBron James is a freak athlete, but he also does the fundamentals better than anybody, than most people do. And certainly most people in the NBA, and certainly better than the average player. The same with, you know, think of a Josh Allen in football, or the best lineman in football, or the best golfer that you could argue who that is, Scotty Scheffler. You know, his fundamentals are better than the average player. And so it's you only have to look that far to see that doing simple better works. And so what does that mean? Well, it means create a process. There's nothing simpler than creating a process. So what in like your pre-shot routine, what is your pre-shot routine? What is your students' pre-shot routine? What are they thinking about as they go through the motions of that pre-shot routine? Okay. What is the process to make a decision? What are you going to do? What's step one? And then what's step two? And then what's step three? Versus I hit it in the trees. I'm mad. I'm getting over there as quickly as I can. I'm taking my 4-iron and I'm swinging as hard as I can, trying to hit a punch shot. There was zero process to that decision making at all. And I didn't, you know, clear the mechanism, if you will. I didn't take a deep breath. I didn't think about where I want to be. So what does that mean? Well, what does that mean? It means, well, if I hit a bad shot, or let's not even say a bad shot, just decision making, a risk reward shot. Am I going to try and carry the water, or am I going to make the safe play? Okay. Well, what our decision making process to me would be, first, what are the chances that I can hit it over the water realistically? Is it 5 out of 10? Is it 8 out of 10? Is it 2 out of 10? Okay. Where am I at in the round, in the tournament? Is it early? Is it late? Am I in the hunt? Do I need to be aggressive to try and make a run here to try and close the gap? Okay. How do I feel like I'm swinging the golf club today? Am I really hitting everything great? Am I struggling and just scraping it around and doing it with smoke and mirrors? And then if I have that as my 3 questions of my process, I feel way better about the decision I made than just standing up there and letting my mind wander, and now letting my mind wander. And now it's my turn to hit, and I haven't thought about it at all. And I just hit the shot. Okay. Same thing with strategy. I have it over there on the right. A strategy approach or process is conservative lines, aggressive swings, knowing your miss, choosing and identifying the easiest, safest shot. And then you could fill in the simple things. You can fill this in with your own with your own philosophies of things, you can, and we could have a conversation and say, these are the three most important fundamentals of the game of golf. And they probably would be very similar, and there might be some things that are a little different from one person to the next, but that's where you make it very custom to what your philosophy on the game is and how you teach. And getting those simple shots and having your students practice and work on those simple things with that process. When they get out in the round, they now will have a lot more confidence. They'll be way calmer because they can think back to the fact that they have practiced and that they have hit these shots before, and that there's a very step-by-step process to make a decision, or a process to decide how you're going to do it, or a process to get ready to hit a shot, so that when those nerves are there on the first tee or the 18th tee or on the 18th green, they've gone through the same thing. And I know none of that is reinventing the wheel, but making it specific, I think our students don't always understand that there's really some method to it that we want to instill with them.
Two things, comments, questions came in, Jeremiah, during that. First question, interested in your thoughts on the differences between confidence and self-efficacy.
I think there's a place for both. I think how I would look at it, to me, is confidence is something that's happens because you've rehearsed or you've practiced. And then the self-efficacy, that one I would say is more, and I might not have the exact definition of this right, but how I perceive that is like, okay, I have confidence because I've practiced, and I'm going to tell myself that I've practiced, and I'm going to trust that, and I'm going to keep telling myself that when these thoughts of where I'm going to hit it has the negative thoughts kind of creep in. So let me rely on the fact that I've practiced, and let me think back to that and be confident that I've done this before. And that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be the exact result that I want, but I've got a really good chance. The analytics and the odds are in my favor. Hopefully that clears it up a little bit.
Yeah, makes sense. It's almost like making that saying that we all hear, fake it till you make it, but like the practicality behind that. In other words, like, yeah, maybe there is a small percentage of, whatever you need to do where, yeah, you might have to fake it a little bit, but the confidence comes in from practicing whatever it might be. So interesting thought there. Another thought came in, just to add, have learned that the more emotional intensity one gives to an experience, whether good or bad, the longer the memory lasts. So it's always a choice what we give our intensity to. This is so important, yet very challenging for our young golfers to learn, controlling emotions when things don't go their way. What's your advice on coaching kids who are wired, having grown up on the internet and info, which is instant?
Yeah, there's not an easy one there, right? Like that's a real thing. That's a real issue. There's some things some challenges there where everything is instant. Like I want to be the best golfer today, because that's what they've grown up on. Because if they want to see a YouTube video, or they want the answer to a question, or they want to be entertained, they can go on their phone and look on it, and it's that instant gratification. So is there a magic bullet? I don't think I found it, but my advice or my encouragement would be there is that you're modeling and encouraging celebration along the process. So as you're whether that's a skill or whether that's a mental thing, where you get less mad after the double, and that's process, and that's progress, I should say. So you have a kid that gets really, really upset when they have a bad hole. And so they have that bad hole, and you've been working with them in lessons about, hey, it's just one hole. You're playing 36 in this tournament, or there's 18 in this round. And we got to try and break it down to the one shot. And so when you can get them to the point that they make a little bit of progress, where normally it would be two holes of being mad after the bad hole. If we can get them to snap out of it after one hole, now we're just, because of the conversations that we're having about it's one shot out of 72, it's one shot out of 85. We had 3 good shots. We can't let that in. We've all heard those things, we've all said those things, but I think it's more about modeling and putting your money where your mouth is about the process, and then celebrating those successes that happen in the process versus just looking at a big outcome and saying, well, you didn't get mad anymore. It's not a perfect, simple solution, but that would be my encouragement with that. Okay, good questions. Appreciate it. And also, like I said at the beginning, like I don't have every answer for everything. These are good things to have conversations about and think about. And at the end here, we maybe have a few minutes where we can have some back and forth and some people offer their perspectives, because I think there's a ton of knowledge in this virtual room as well, that an experience of what they've done. So to that point, here we are with Trust the Process, one of the best ever at trusting the process, Kobe Bryant. So, and this is the idea of helping your students approach each shot, each round, each practice session from this neutral perspective. Is, I have my goal. I've set my goal. It's either the big goal, it's either the long-term goal, or it's the more short-term goal. But if I'm going to reach it, what do I need to do next? And what's my best path to do that? Okay. And the golf way is, how can I, if we're talking specifically about the game, how can I most efficiently complete this hole or this round? What is the next step to reach that goal of being efficient? Because if I'm efficient, I'm going to have a lower score on the hole. Okay. Something that we've talked about over and over here is the relying on the practice to gain confidence. I think that's a missing. I think I see that a lot in golfers, and I see it a lot in the high school kids and the college kids. Not as much in the college kids, but a lot in high school kids. It's a missed thing. Like the idea that I think too often we just picture practice from a physical standpoint. Like we only think of practice as it's making me better physically. And it is, absolutely. If you all are great coaches, you're having them work on and practice the right things, they're going to have a better golf swing after they work with you. But what we miss out, and what I think golfers miss out on, is letting that practice and that work be a calming and confidence thing when they play. And that going back to think, I have done this before, I have practiced this shot before, I've hit lots of balls on the range, I've played lots of practice rounds. I trust what my coach is telling me. And so when I go out there, I can just be confident because I have put in the work. Focus on matter of fact decision-making. We've talked about that a bunch, not emotional, not too high, not too low, not being super negative or mad or angry. And then this whole concept of, and we'll see it in a quote in a little bit too, but the next shot is the very most important shot of the round. The next one. Not the one that we just had, not the one that's coming up, that tough tee shot on hole 16. It's the next one. And that kind of, it's a little corny, it's a little cliche, if you will, but I think that's the kind of very practical thinking that we need, that keeps us right where we are. Okay, another book that I've just started to read, The Champion's Mind. This one I'm still learning and just getting into the chapters that talk about this, but I've some things that I found fascinating. was this visualization and seeing your success. Um, you know, it visualizing and using visual thinking about what it looks like when you're successful and what it looks like when you're reaching goals and things like that creates this blueprint and it even creates muscle memory. They're finding through these studies, almost every Olympian uses it. Okay. So if the very best athletes on the entire world, face of the earth, are using imagery, we can probably use it to get better. And it's going to be, we're not going to be great at it to begin with, but just picturing the ideal steps of success. And then including as many of the intangibles around that, the sights, the sounds, the smells, what it would feel like, all those things. If the more you can visualize that before a round or before a practice session, the more likely it is that that's how it's going to go. Or it at least puts us in a frame of mind, and it at least allows us to have the opportunity to repeat that thing with those thoughts and visions as we go out and play. Isn't not perfect, not going to work every time, not going to be the golden ticket here where that's the only thing we have to do. We don't have to practice, but it certainly helps frame our mind where we want it to be. Okay. And then a little bit more on that. So a little more in depth than that is like, see it, feel it, and enjoy it. And I think that's that last one, enjoy it. I miss out on that too much. I miss out on that all the time. Like I don't enjoy when I'm playing well nearly as much as I should. I really get mad. I'm really frustrated and I let a bad round bother me. And our students do that too. But it's you should, if you can't get to the point where you enjoy and find just as much excitement as you do feeling bad about a bad round in a good round, we have to evaluate how we're thinking about it and what are we doing? Why, a strategy I've used for my own self, because I am not great at this, is like, I think it's the Jim Harbaugh thing, like who's got it better than us? Nobody. And thinking about it like that, you're on a golf course, you're playing golf, you're teaching a student, your student is out there taking a golf lesson, they're trying to play golf. The golf courses are awesome, they're beautiful, you're outside, you're getting exercise. Like enjoy that process and enjoy the success and visualize yourself enjoying it. And I think you'll just be in a position where your students and you will be able to find that much more success in whatever it is, practice sessions or rounds of golf. Okay, couple things, how we think about golf. So we talked about the next shot. So quote from Drew Brees there, the next play, if we put it in golf context, the next shot is the most important shot of the round. Or, Drew Brees' statement was the next play is the most important play of the game. And it's that next, and it's just letting whatever has happened be gone, not worrying about 2, 3, 4 shots or plays ahead. It's the next one. What's going to happen in that one? Kind of that, what we talked about with the young player that gets really frustrated and things like that. Win the individual moments. Just have little wins along the way. And trying to figure out, watching that progress happen as part of the process and then celebrating it when it does happen. Greatness is a choice. I think sometimes we don't think that. I think we just assume everybody who's great is born that way. Some of them are. A lot of the God-given talents are there for a lot of those best players and athletes in the world. But those same people made a choice to physically do what it takes to be great and also mentally do what it takes to be great. The next two I love. The next two I just absolutely love. And this is, I put it in golf context, but the original quote was day instead of round. But if 50% of your round is bad, does that give you the right to concede the other 50%? Man, have I done that a lot. And if we can take some of these skills and strategies and and try and focus it more on the process in the next shot and being where our feet are and only having that next shot be what is in our mind and not let our mind wander and get on all these other things, we're going to have a lot more great back nines. We're going to have a lot of rounds where we recover halfway through and come back, or we have that slow start. We're going to be able to get back into a groove and play really well still. And so are our students. So I think that's a good one. I think that's a good life one there too. That where if 50% of your day is bad, does that give you the right to concede the other 50%? Same thing, man. I woke up and I was mad because whatever happened in the morning, my kids were arguing about who's going to take the garbage out or whose turn it was to do dishes, or you get yelled at as you first get to work for the day, or that member says something stupid. Are we going to just let that thing linger and ruin the rest of the day? We're going to have a lot of bad days if we do. And we're going to have a lot of bad rounds. And then the second one is, or the last one there is really good too. And the quote again from, Trevor Mawad worked with a bunch of college teams. He worked with NFL teams, and that was up on the wall. What if we don't say stupid shit out loud? Like, we just don't verbalize negative things. We don't say, man, we're going to play terrible today. Or man, I hate that hole. Or we don't say the dumb things out loud. And the fewer times that we do that, it starts to get weeded out. And that's been a sign in locker rooms. That's been, a culture in teams. And I think that's something that a nugget you can share with your students there. And then just a couple more quotes and mental approaches. So Bob Rotella, he's got lots of good stuff, but it's the title of one of his books, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And then I'm sure this is one of his quotes. I'm sure there's others that have said it. I find myself saying this to high school kids and to students all the time, that golf is the ultimate game of managing your bad shots or getting the most out of your bad shots. You're going to have so few perfect shots in a round and in your life that if you think you're going to go out and play 18 perfect holes and hit the ball perfect every single shot, you're going to be really disappointed. And golf is about, how can we manage that? How do we manage when we hit a miss? How do we manage a consistent miss that we have? Really good quote there from Tiger, going back to the visualization stuff. Visualizing is a crucial part of my training. I see myself sinking putts and winning tournaments before they happen. Fake it till you make it. You got to believe that it can happen. You got to think about how it's going to happen, what it's going to feel like. And again, I'm a firm believer that that's going to give you some confidence as you get into that spot. Maybe not the guy you'd think I'd have a quote from, Theo Vaughn, if you know who Theo Vaughn is. First of all, hilarious. Second of all, not really I've used this I taught a college undergrad class. I've taught a couple master's classes here in the last year. I've used it in every one. And this is that, do simple better. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Like, we can talk about all this and these sound like good ideas, and I'm not saying that these are all the answers, but if you don't change anything, nothing's going to change. So nothing changes if nothing changes. And then Nick Saban, he's got millions of them, but I really like this one because it goes back to the processes. Outcomes are a distraction. Focusing on the process that you have to do to get the outcome is the most important thing you need to do. So how are we going to get there? We can think about, you just because you say we're going to win a national championship at Alabama for Nick Saban doesn't mean they're going to win a national championship. Just because, Tiger Woods says he's going to win the Masters doesn't mean he's going to win the Masters. There's a process to make those things happen. For our students, it's that handicap improvement. It's that member guest playing well in the member guest, or having a career low, or winning the club championship, or getting colleges to notice them, or making all conference, or whatever the case may be for whoever our student is. We can have that big goal. We should absolutely have that big goal. But if that's all we do, we're not going to reach it. It has to be this process. What's the process to get to that point? So, I appreciate the opportunity again to chat. The final thing here is just that we do in fact, a little bit more about what I'm doing now. So I am still a PGA member. I am still teaching golf lessons at Rolling Meadows in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. But my full-time job is at Wisconsin Lutheran College, which is in Milwaukee or Wauwatosa. It's actually on the boundary line of both, so it's in both. Right across the street from Freighter, if you're familiar with that, is between Blue Mound and Wisconsin Ave. But we have a master's program in sports management at Wisconsin Lutheran. It's 100% online. And you don't have to be Lutheran to go there. And I'm not here to talk about if you'd like to get your graduate degree and get your master's in sports management, we'd love to have you. I know that's not realistic for all of us or for many of us even, but I did feel like as I took on this role that there might be an opportunity where we could help. We could help with some of these categories that I know you guys are facing day to day in your jobs at your clubs. And so we have put together this WPGA business certificate, and we talked about it at the fall meeting a little bit. You've had some information on it, but essentially what we've done is we've created a heavily discounted program. Each of those classes normally is so you're going to get 4 classes in this certificate. Each of those classes, if you paid by credit, would be $1,600-ish each. So to get 12, what would equate to 12 graduate credits for under $2,000 is a really good deal. I think, Erica, we said there's 16 MSR credits for that.
Correct. Yep.
So they do count for that for the PGA if you're looking at that. Fully online, I would call it a modified synchronous model. So you would get together, each of those classes would have one Zoom class a night, usually 7 to 9 p.m. I'm sorry, one Zoom class a week. They're 8-week courses. If you can't make the Zoom, there's recording, watching opportunities. If you're going just for the certificate, it's totally pass fail. So there's some work to be done, but it's not going to be crazy. But I do think that there's a lot in sports marketing that we go through. We have a bunch of great guest speakers in each of these classes. Sports business and personnel management is like some HR things and some leadership stuff. Sports finance, all of us are being asked to do more and more with the finances. Some of us, that's in our wheelhouse already. Others of us, it's not. And law and risk management, like that's, another thing that we're being asked to be a part of more and more at a lot of different places. And we don't always have the opportunity to have these things show up either in PGA education opportunities, or sometimes they're a little bit hard to get through in this format where we're talking about a 60-minute seminar online, or even when we do the in-person education for the PGA. So just wanted to highlight that. We'd love to have some of you in it. If some of you have been on the fence about it and you want to pull the trigger, sports marketing starts on Monday. We can still find a way to get you in. The thing about this is too, it's an 18-month process because you're going to be it won't be just PGA students. It won't be just WPGA folks. You'll be with our graduate students and their GAs which is a graduate assistant for our different sports. Some are in the industry already. Some are recent graduates that are just trying to expand their education. But you'll go right along with them. But you won't do anything in the summer. So there's a break there. So sports marketing is January to mid-March, and then sports business and personnel management are mid-March through mid-May. And then you're off for the summer until the fall, when we would pick back up with sports finance in like October-ish, and run through the end of the year with sports law and risk management. So you would be able to to not have to be trying to take a class in the middle of your busiest season. But so that is there. That link has been shared and we can share it with you via email again. You can get my email from the PGA directory and just shoot me an email if you have any questions, or you can ask Erica, or I'll hang out here for a little bit if you have other questions for me online today. I'm happy to answer those. Again, really appreciate the opportunity. Humbled that people would want to come and hear what I have to say. Hopefully you take away one or two things and have some ideas on some things that might help you in your own careers as you're teaching lessons and whatever it may be. And if I can ever help you out, let me know.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeremiah, for your time and for everything you shared today. Very knowledgeable, very important in our everyday here as golf professionals and beyond. So just a reminder to everybody on this call, we did record today's session. The recordings are posted on our members only page. So how you get to that members only page is simply by going to our section website, wisconsin.pj.com. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there is a place to log in. You would use your pj.org login to access all the materials on our members only page. If you scroll down about 2/3 of the way, you'll see this recording posted along with our other webinars as well. If you want to share it, refer back to anything that Jeremiah shared. Like he said, if you have questions on the WPGA certificate program, reach out to him or myself. And with that being said, timing was impeccable, Jeremiah. So we'll sign off for the day and give you guys back 1 minute of your time. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next webinar.